finance ministers focusing on what is happening with Greece?
Well, there are two different things. I think the agenda on Greece is now fixed. Economic developments in Greece are rather better than expected, both on the macro side and the fiscal side. So let's not confuse the two.
That meeting is important for a number of reasons. It clearly is going to be a focus of attention for the markets as they look at what's happening with debts, as they look at what's happening with the programme. The IMF has indicated that at the end of this year, it's going to make a decision on whether or not it participates going forward from here. Is that a kind of now or never meeting? Because next year, politics becomes very difficult in Europe. We talked about what's happening in Italy already, but then we get into the Dutch vote, we get into the French vote, we get into the German vote. So is that meeting on the 5th a now or never?
Well, I don't believe in theories like now or never, but it's true that the sooner the better, as far as the Greek case is concerned, because then we're entering into a period of continuous elections in Europe. So the sooner we finish up with the Greek case, the better.
Is your expectation that the IMF will remain as part of the programme?
I hope so. I think every player wants the IMF in.
I've been talking since we arrived here to a number of bank CEOs to get a sense, and CEOs to get a sense of how they see things developing. They're saying the 5th is important, but there's the possibility of further meetings. So is the 5th?
Of course.
So if we don't get a deal done on the 5th, we still have a few days.
I think everything is ready for the 5th, but from my experience, even if there is something at the end and there's a small delay, it does matter. I think that the government now is very clear and is very close to closing the evaluation. So I hope that on the 5th there's going to be white smoke.
We've always had this kind of issue of the mathematics surrounding sustainability, debt sustainability. Back in September 2015, Mario Draghi talked about the idea that maybe the ECB should look at the sustainability story.
Yes.
Did that ever happen? And if not, why not?
Well, as you know, the definition of sustainability now is different. The sustainability now implies that every year Greece will pay not more than 15% of GDP in amortization and interest payments. And I think we are very close to that. That's, the distance is not that large. So I do not expect that the measures needed for sustainability are that severe.
Right. Does that imply, therefore, that the debt relief actually is a fairly manageable story as well? I'm just curious to know what you think debt relief ultimately will look like as we kind of feed it back into what you've just been talking about.
Well, as you know, first of all, there are the so-called short-term measures and then the medium-term measures. For us, for Greece, it is much better to specify the measures now, even if, as we know from the program, they will be implemented after the end of the program. But everybody, including market participants, wants, and the IMF and the ECB, perhaps, want the measures to be specified now, although they will be applied later.
Right.
So market clarity and transparency implies that it would be better off if the measures will be specified now.
You bring up market participants. Over the last few days, those few weeks, we've seen quite a rally in Greek financial stocks, in Greek stocks, in the Greek bond market. Yet Greek banks still trade on very low book values. I think 0.2, 0.3 is the kind of numbers we're talking about. Why is the market pricing Greek banks in that way? What risk is the market applying to those institutions, do you think?
Well, as you know, the crisis did not start from the Greek banks. They were the victims. The crisis started from the sovereign, and the contagion was from the sovereign to the banks. So they have suffered a lot. Now they are much better. They are well capitalized. They have enough provisions. And for the last 2 quarters, we have seen a better NPL development. So things start becoming better even for banks. Profitability has turned to the better in the last quarter. And as the economy recovers, bank profitability and the development of NPLs are becoming more benign.
Right, but it's a very long workout we're talking.
It's a long workout, exactly. Still, there's a stock of NPLs. Of course, NPLs are a problem, but also it's a big opportunity. I mean, we have done simulations in the Bank of Greece and show that if they meet the targets we have set to the banks, then Greek banks will not need more capital. On the contrary, capital will increase. CET1 capital, that is high quality capital, will increase in the next 3 years if they meet the NPL targets we have set for them. And they're quite I would say, realistic targets.
Okay. We've talked about what's happening on the 4th, which is the focus on Italy. Then we're talking about what's happening in Brussels on the 5th, which is the meeting of finance ministers. Then we've got to the 8th, which the market is waiting for to see what happens in Frankfurt with the ECB meeting. December last year, it could be argued that the ECB did not deliver what the market was looking for, and we saw quite a violent reaction as a result of that. Is there a sense, do you think, on the Governing Council that we do not want to see a repeat of that?
The ECB has delivered. I mean, if you look at numbers, inflation is on the rise in Europe. GDP growth is better than we had before. And we have calculated that the ECB's contribution, I mean the monetary policy contribution, is quite substantial to this effect. So the ECB has delivered. Sometimes markets are very impatient. They want to deliver now.
Yeah.
As you said, now or never. But the situation is not like that. The ECB takes a long-term stance. You must have trust to the ECB. We are doing the right thing. And on the 8th, we are going to discuss the situation, the new forecast, and then we'll decide what to do.
Has tension grown, though? Is your sense that tension has grown as a result of the fact that bond yields have risen, and as a result of which there isn't maybe the same requirement to change the parameters of the programme?
Well, it is true that bond prices and bond yields have changed. We are entering perhaps a new era. The numbers show that our policy works. Inflation is on the rise, as I said before. Yep. We look at all this data on the 8th of December and we will decide. I mean, of course, monetary policy will continue to be accommodating until inflation arrives at the desirable level, which is 2% or slightly lower.
But now is not the time.
There's still a long distance from this target.
So far too early to be talking about the T word, the tapering word.
It's far too early, exactly.
One thing we have seen as a result of Donald Trump's election has been a steeper yield curve. Is that desirable in your mind?
From the bank's point of view, it is, yes. I think it is a desirable effect.
Because it helps the banks?
It helps the banks.
But it does raise borrowing costs?
Yes, but if growth also goes up, it does matter. Because now the most important problem is low growth. If growth improves, it is expected that bond yields will be on the rise.
You talk about rising inflation, and even the 5 years point to the fact that even quite some way out, inflation is not going to get back to target. That's something that the market is pricing in at the moment, and your data seems to indicate, and your forecasts seem to indicate something as well. Janet Yellen talks about running a hot economy, and she has seen this. It'd be interesting to know what she thinks now, but she thinks that overshooting on the inflation story is maybe something that central banks, or her central bank, should think about. Is that something that the ECB can think about as well?
No, not yet. Not yet. The cycle differs now in Europe compared to the United States. We're in a different phase of the cycle.
But do you think it would be desirable to point out to the markets that even if once we get to inflation targets, that actually running even beyond that a little bit will be something that the bank would tolerate? No,
we haven't discussed this thing at all.
Just one final quick question, Governor. When do you anticipate? And we've seen a big drop in Greek bond yields. We're through 7%, which is a kind of really important line in the sand. Mm-hmm. When do you think we're going to see Greek bonds being included in the QE programme?
Well, this is up to the Governing Council of the ECB to decide. Let's see what happens on the 5th of December. And if we have something concrete on debt, then we'll take a decision.
Governor, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for spending so much of your time with us. We clearly have so much to talk about, and you wear two hats, and you need to focus on what is happening here in Greece and what is happening at the ECB. I just have been given a quick moment just to ask you one final question. How would you describe your relationship with the current administration here in Athens? Is it a good relationship? Is it something that you feel is positive, or do you feel that relationship has become more difficult?
No, it's positive now. It's much better than before. Bygones are bygones. We stare at the future now with more optimism.
And you sense that Greece is beyond the worst that it
definitely,
suffered, that this will not return?
The worst is behind us now.
Because the Financial Stability Review that came out yesterday feels like a long time ago, talks about the fact that we could see a return to that financial fragmentation that Mario Draghi has talked about in the past. You don't see that happening again, particularly when it comes to this country?
No, in Greece, the situation has improved a lot since last year. Compare the situation now to last year's situation. You have a much better macroeconomic environment, a much better fiscal environment, and also banks are much better off, well capitalized, well provisioned.
Yeah.
There is now the main target is to bring down the stock of non-performing loans. That's a big task both for the banks and the Greek economy. It's a challenge, but also it's a huge opportunity.
Talking to CEOs over the last few hours, one thing they've pointed out to me is that the Greek people don't feel it. The Greek people aren't going to feel this recovery.
Well, numbers improve first, and then people feel it in their pockets. So
but how long will that take? Because what we are seeing at the moment around the world, and we've seen it Brexit, we've seen it in the United States with the election of Donald Trump, is this sense that we have this group of people that do not feel the recovery, even when the numbers start to show it. So how do we convince them that the recovery is on track?
Unemployment in Greece, which was very high and is still high, it is falling. We have employment creation. That's the first impact that people will feel positively on their pockets, I think. They got 5, 6 terrible years, but the situation is improving now. And that's my argument, both to the government, to the people, is that the worst are behind us. Right. Sacrifices have not been wasted. The economy is fully rebalanced. We started with huge twin deficits 6 years ago. Now we have twin surpluses, both the current account, the primary budget. Competitiveness has improved a lot, and we see a shift from non-traded good sectors and activities into traded good ones, more extrovert. So this is a very good development, which makes me look to the future in a more optimistic way.
And the people trust the institutions of government. They trust the central bank. They trust what is happening out over the road in Parliament. They trust that these people will deliver for them, because it is an act of faith at this point in time.
Well, judged by results, it's true that we had 6 very difficult years, I said. Five governments fell, actually, during this period. The starting conditions in Greece were much worse than in the other program countries. Of course, we have made mistakes. The institutions also made mistakes. But after all, and I mean, in politics, what matters mostly are results, and the results are positive. Of course, the other side of the story is a huge deterioration of living standards. Yeah. Wages have fallen, taxes are up. But on the other hand, we have a much more balanced economy now.
Do you think that we need...
the future is better for us?
The future is better. Do you think that we need to see some kind of concrete physical evidence of that happening? For instance, the end of capital controls. These are the kind of the big looming